Released in August of 1998, starring Wesley Snipes and directed by Stephen Norrington, Blade was based on the character created by Marvel writer Marv Wolfman, a half-human, half-vampire who has devoted his life to killing as many vampires as he can.
There are worse things out tonight than vampires.
Like what?
Like me.
The movie was a moderate success, and 4 years later spawned Blade 2, directed by an up-and-comer named Guillermo del Toro. And they made a third movie too, but the less said about that, the better.
I ate a lot of garlic, and I just farted. Silent but deadly.
While both films share plenty of similarities, they're also quite different thanks to the visions of their respective directors. The character of Blade is almost invincible when it comes to fighting off his enemies, but what happens when we pit Blade against Blade? Let's find out. Naturally, there be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen the films, well, now would be the time to catch up. The first Blade doesn't bother with an origin story. It gets right to the point by introducing us to the character, a strong, silent type who takes pleasure in slicing and dicing vampires. He's aided by Abraham Whistler, a gruff old-timer who serves as Blade's Q of sorts. Together, the two make an imposing team that should make all the bloodsuckers quake in their boots. But they find themselves up against an imposing foe in Deacon Frost, a vampire sick of playing second fiddle to a larger group of decadent elders who rule the vampire underworld. When Frost devises a plan to resurrect a blood god called Lamegra, he sets his sights on making vampires the ruling class of the entire world.
It won't matter who's pure blood and who's not. How you gonna cure the whole fucking world?
The fate of the world is also in question in Blade 2, although the threat this time is quite different. A new breed of lethal vampires, dubbed the Reapers, are feeding on human and vampires alike. The catch is their victims then become Reapers themselves, and before you know it, there's a horde of the things on the prowl, and they keep spreading like a deadly virus they are. The whole world is liable to be made up of really ugly creatures with unquenchable appetites for blood. That would not be a pretty picture. To put a stop to this, Blade has to make an uncomfortable alliance with a group of vampires who were originally trained to kill him.
Sounds like a plan.
What do you really think?
They're gonna fuck us the first chance they get.
Both films, written by David Goyer, are compelling from start to finish and manage to fit in ample amounts of action, horror, palace intrigue, and humor.
Mother's milk.
Refreshingly, Part 2 isn't a carbon copy of the first one, but a wholly unique experience with a personality of its own. Since both stories are so engaging as they are, it's hard to pick a victor. Verdict, draw.
Motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?
Every good hero needs a villain, and thankfully in the first two Blade movies, the sword-wielding warrior has some very formidable foes. Deacon Frost is the quintessential Blade villain, played by Stephen Dorff as a cocky, snarky bad boy with a chip on his shoulder. Tired of being relegated to the sidelines because he's not a
Pure blood.
Frost is eager to reach the next level by any means necessary, and that includes wiping out the leaders of the Vampire Nation, as well as Blade. It should also be noted that Blade is actually a creation of Frost's, who fed on Blade's mother while she was in childbirth, which resulted in Blade's vampiric qualities. So it's not just business for Blade, it's personal in this case.
And here we are. One big happy fucking family.
And there are many villains to be found in Blade 2, but the main antagonist is Jared Nomak, the head of the parasitic Reaper clan. While not as nifty of a dresser as Deacon Frost, Nomak is indeed a fearsome foe for Blade and for all vampires in general. But far from just being a toothy monster who will kill whatever is in his way, Nomak is, in plenty of ways, very much a Guillermo del Toro villain, a tragic Frankenstein's monster of sorts who is created in a lab by his father, then completely shunned when he didn't turn out ideally. Like many Del Toro monsters, he's a lost soul who's a prisoner of his own horrible situation. We're not saying Nomak was ever destined to be a good guy, but under the circumstances, it's understandable that he'd hold a grudge against his dad and the vampire population as a whole. Both villains are memorable in their own way, but truth be told, Deacon Frost pops off the screen more thanks to Dorff's energetic performance and personal stakes involved for Blade. He wins this one by a fang. Verdict, Blade.
Looks like your mascara's running.
While Blade seems like a go-at-it-alone kind of guy, he would be shit out of luck if it weren't for trusty father figure Whistler, who might be the only person on Earth who's allowed to cut Blade down to size when he needs to.
Catch you fuckers at a bad time?
Played by a perfectly cast Chris Christopherson, Whistler is a lovable man in his own ornery way, and his death is an emotional high point for the film. Blade also gets some assistance from Dr. Karen Jensen, a hematologist who seeks to find a cure for Blade's condition and her own, having been bitten by one of Frost's henchmen. Karen isn't really a love interest so much as a trusty sidekick who happens to be pretty badass in her own right.
Go ahead. Bite me. I'll just cure myself. I did it before, and I can do it again.
The subject of allies is a touchy one in Blade 2, since Blade finds out too late that he can't trust almost anyone other than himself and Whistler, who is thankfully resurrected from the dead to once again assist his protege. In Whistler's absence, Blade found himself a younger assistant in the form of Scud, played by Norman Reedus.
Where'd you dig up this shit bird anyway?
The fuck's your problem, Poppy?
In full greasy outlaw mode. Additionally, in order to defeat Nomak and the Reapers, Blade has to team up with a band of firepower packing vampires called the Blood Pack, a crew that doesn't exactly enjoy the company of the guy they've been trained to kill. While things start off tense, the team up works together for a while until Blade finds himself betrayed by Scud and Reinhardt, the Blood Pack's most hostile member. And he's played by longtime Del Toro pal Ron Perlman. Reinhardt is good fun to watch, even as he's always a moment away from stabbing Blade in the back. Whistler is the man in both movies. But do Scud and the Blood Pack technically count as allies? For a while, yes. And with that considered, the second film gets a leg up for giving Blade some additional firepower with which to grease dastardly blood suckers. It's just a shame it didn't work out in the end. For Blade's frenemies, that is. Verdict, Blade 2.
Tell me something, Skid.
No, man, it's Scud. Scud like stud, Scud.
Whatever.
While featuring gallons of blood and gore, decapitations and burnings, neck bites and gross tongue things, the Blade movies definitely lean more into the action side of things than horror. That perhaps comes with the superhero territory. Both movies feature some thrilling action sequences. What was so fun about the first one was that not only did it show us Blade was a master of weapons, he's also a damn fine martial artist, and Wesley Snipes' physicality in the role made the character a rather memorable, if unconventional, superhero.
You keep your eyes open. They're everywhere.
The film's thumping techno soundtrack and fast-paced editing aid in bringing dizzying fight scenes to life, and the sight of Blade exploding bloodsuckers frankly never gets old, even if the visual effects are a tad outdated. Blade 2 similarly gets lots of mileage out of Snipes' excellent ability with a sword, though it's not quite into the martial arts as much as its predecessor. There's plenty of gunplay in the film, however, and Del Toro stages his action sequences with predictable artistry.
You gotta be kidding me.
The highlight of the film is a club sequence where the Blood Pack meet their match in the Reapers. It's terrifically executed bit of horror action mayhem. Both films are up to the task of keeping our eyes glued to the screen when the body count rises drastically, hence, it's just too hard to pick a clear winner in this contest.
Are you insane?
Verdict, draw. Despite all the swordplay and gunplay in the films, there should be no doubt that the Blade movies are rooted in the horror genre. These are blood-sucking vampires we're talking about, after all. The first film has a few nifty horror sequences, such as the one in the morgue where Karen gets bitten by a crispy Donald Logue.
Came back to finish you off.
or the freaky discovery and ultimate frying of morbidly obese vampire Pearl.
They moved.
Maybe the most iconic sequence in the film features a rave that gets doused with showers of blood. We won't soon forget that sight. There are many dismemberments and beheadings to keep the horror crowd sated, as well as a decent amount of engaging vampire lore. Plus, any movie with Udo Kier in it must have horror in its blood.
Damn it, Frost! I'm talking to you!
We're in a library. You don't need to shout.
With Guillermo at the helm, Blade 2 certainly revels in bringing us some scary, ghoulish imagery. The Reapers, first and foremost, are creatures straight out of a nightmare, and a ghastly autopsy sequence where one is dissected absolutely keeps you on the edge of your seat. One can sense that Guillermo would have liked to inject even more of his own unique sensibilities into the film, but was maybe held back a little by Goyer's screenplay. But there's no doubt that the look and feel of this film is often pure Del Toro, from the lighting and the set designing to the makeup and gore. We've just got to give this round to the one and only GDT. Verdict, Blade 2.
Get you later.
While Blade is a man often short on words, long on action, he does get off a pretty good one-liner every once in a while, and both Blade films have some rather memorable bits of dialogue throughout.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes. Still heavy.
You're so big.
You give Frost a message from me. You tell him it's open season on all suckheads. Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
You're human.
Barely. I'm a lawyer.
Can you blush?
Ooh, so exciting.
Trying to attract them, not scare them off.
Yeah, well, some of us can't see in the dark, you fucking nipplehead. What am I supposed to do?
Keep talking, Hunky Tongue. Just makes my sending you to the next world all the sweeter.
Been there. Done that. Do your worst, chicken shit. Can you blush?
Obviously, the expanded cast in the sequel allows Goyer to craft dialogue that's more amusingly playful and, sure, sometimes juvenile, which enables Blade 2 to say a bit more in this category. Verdict, Blade 2.
All right. Papa's got a brand new bag.
Both films build steadily to a thrilling finale, although one is a little more explosive than the other. At the end of Blade, Frost successfully calls forth the blood god, sacrificing the elder vampires and transforming himself into a nearly unkillable super vampire. Nearly being the key word. Of course, as nothing ever gets past Blade. Blade has to carve up an entire army of vampire henchmen, never looking anything less than unstoppable, and while Frost puts up a good fight for a brief moment in time, he's no match for the man. While tossing off the classic finishing line,
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
Blade ends Frost's very brief reign at the top of the vampire food chain with a bang. Good riddance to that emo punk. Blade 2's finale is a little more contained, although no less engrossing. Blade has to thwart the traitors in his midst, taking out Reinhardt and Scud, while Nomak has dramatic confrontations with his father and sister, resulting in the deaths of both of them. The latter kill puts Blade in a bad mood. He never even had the chance to ask her out, and he and Nomak have an exciting one-on-one bout that leaves both battered and bruised. Unsurprisingly, Blade comes out on top, and Nomak's final moments are pure Guillermo, with the monster almost glad to be saying goodbye to this cruel world. It's a more subdued, emotional ending than the first Blades, and even though we're secretly sentimentalists around here, we have to give the original Blades bigger, more apocalyptic conclusion: the edge.
There's still a war going on, and I have a job to do. You want to help? Make me a better serum.
Verdict, Blade.
When you understand the nature of a thing, you know what it's capable of.
Now comes the hard part. As mentioned, both Blade films are thoroughly entertaining action horror hybrids that are refreshingly different enough from each other that you don't feel like you're watching the same thing twice. As the character Blade is given a bit more of an amusing personality in the second film, he's got more facial expressions and quips anyway, which is quite fun to watch.
Oh, I get it. I see now.
And the expanded cast and universe are certainly welcome. That said, there's something special about the first movie in a series. Blade felt fresh in a way Blade 2 can't, simply because it is the sequel. The first film also feels more groundbreaking than the second. Both films boast imposing villains, solid supporting cast, killer action, and some nasty horror sequences. We don't know about you, but it's hard to say which is better than the other. When it comes right down to it, some days you feel like watching Blade, other times it's a Blade 2 day. And on an ideal day, you'll check them both out. There's just too much cool in both of them. Verdict, Blade 2.
Listen, shit kicker. You're about one cunt hair away from hillbilly heaven.
I love it when you talk dirty.
But at the end of this particular day, Blade 2 is the victor in this battle by a very thin margin. Guillermo del Toro, Reapers, vampire conspiracies, Ron Perlman.
But you had me on a short leash. Didn't you, Hefe?
All ingredients for a tasty meal that even a suckhead would enjoy. But don't let us have the final word. Tell us your opinion in the comment section and let us know if you have a preference.
Well, you didn't think I forgot about you, did you?
Most people probably wouldn't know what to do, but us 80 kids know exactly where to turn when we're bothered by a spook, ghost, or specter. Who are you gonna call? They are the supreme team to rid us of any unwanted supernatural phenomenon or things that go bump in the night. They showed us across 3 feature films, an animated series, and a pretty rad video game that worked as a third film until the actual third film became a reality. But there are eager fans who are keen on settling a decades-long debate which Ghostbusters film is superior, the original or the sequel. In the past, the second outing for the gang seemed to spur negative reaction, while the first one is held in the highest regards. But is the sequel really an inferior movie, though? There's only one way to find out, so fire up your proton pack and do not cross those streams as we show these films how we do things downtown. Face Off! No actual science was used to determine the outcome of Face Off. Your results may vary. Please do not consume Face Off if you are allergic to conjecture, opinion, or general nonsense. We'd like to thank you for watching Face Off. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes live. Now back to the show. Round 1, Gadgets. One of the main attractions to the original Ghostbusters is all the fun gadgets the guys use for, well, busting ghosts. Just about every kid threw on a backpack and used a stick of some sort to act like they had a proton pack. The proton packs were the coolest. A nuclear reactor on your back to shoot out positively charged particles to trap ghosts. Yeah, that shit's going on my Christmas list. This, of course, leads to the ghost trap, which pulls a ghost down into the device and keeps it there until it can be unloaded into the containment unit. And you'll never find these ghosts without the PKE meter, which measures psychokinetic energy. You're gonna need it if you want to track down any of these slippery ghosts. You'll also want to keep a pair of ecto goggles handy to spot any ghosts that are invisible to the naked eye. It's clear that the first film had boundless ideas as it introduced all of these electrifying gadgets to the Ghostbusters franchise. In part 2, these same gadgets return, but the proton packs were noticeably slimmed down to make them easier to carry. The functions remain the same, however, and it still packs quite the punch. The only real new gadget we get is the slime cannon. After finding the negatively charged slime flowing under New York City, the guys decide to use positively charged slime to their advantage. While its use is really ever only implemented in one scene, which we'll get to, we do see a few people get sprayed down with the happy slime, including Ray himself when he gets taken over by Vigo. It never really does much else in the film and creates a giant mess. Because of this, the winner has to be verdict, Ghostbusters. Round 2, Ghosts. You can't have Ghostbusters without ghosts. The first film created some of the best special effects that have been done up to that point. The Slimer ghost has been carved into movie history as a favorite among fans. They were even disappointed that he didn't show up in the 2021 film. No one wants to settle for Muncher.
Nobody likes you.
Upon rewatch, some of the ghosts in the background look amazing for as little screen time as they have. When all the spirits are unleashed upon New York, we see a montage of them wreaking havoc. And the zombie taxi driver is a fun utilization of full practical effects rather than optical. And we'd be remiss not to mention the one that kicked it all off, the monstrous librarian ghost who set the tone for the entire franchise. In the sequel, the filmmakers had a higher budget, so they were able to create even crazier spirits. While in the middle of a trial, the Scoleri brothers let loose upon the unsuspecting crowd. The look of the ghosts is more cartoonish than the ghosts seen in the previous films, but this could be due to the popularity of the real Ghostbusters cartoon. We're also treated to some cool shit like a ghost train that runs straight through Winston while they're underground searching for the source of the angry slime. Other memorable visuals include the jogging ghost in Central Park, some possessed minks after the owner steps in some angry slime, and the famed Titanic docks in New York with all of its dead passengers.
Better late than never.
Due to the angry slime being responsible for these imaginative bits and fun scenes, we have to hand this round to verdict: Ghostbusters 2. Round 3, Jerks. Every comedic ghost movie needs a low-level jerk to try to ruin all the ghost busting. The original film has one of the most despised dicks in all of cinema, Walter Peck.
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
Peck is played expertly by William Atherton, who could go on to play other jerks in films such as Die Hard, Real Genius, and who could forget the award-winning Biodome.
Don't say we didn't save some freaking trees!
As an inspector for the EPA, an organization you usually want to root for, he causes all sorts of trouble for the team. He's concerned about the environmental impact that the containment unit and the rest of their ghost equipment could have.
Hey, please. See the storage facility, Mr. Peck.
Later, he returns with a court order to shut down their entire operation, and in doing so, he releases every single captured ghost back into New York. He claims that the Ghostbusters are using some sort of gas to trigger hallucinations, which is what people are really seeing instead of ghosts. Luckily, the mayor has a change of heart and takes the Ghostbusters' side, allowing them to do their thing.
We got work to do. Now, what do you need from me?
And stop the apocalypse the only way they know how. By busting ghosts. Even after the Ghostbusters saved the city from total destruction, some people are still unconvinced jerks about the paranormal. Enter the mayor's assistant, Jack Hardmire. He doesn't believe anything the guys tell him and thinks they're completely making it up. When the mayor turns down their idea to tell everyone to be nice to each other to neutralize the angry slime, Hardmire says he would love them to tell some people downtown about all of this. Of course, this is a dirty trick to get the group committed to an asylum. Hardmire is played by another famous jerk, Kurt Fuller. Fuller has been a jerk in numerous films like the classic Wayne's World. But unfortunately, there's no beating the king of all jerks, Walter Peck. Verdict: Ghostbusters. Round 4, Vehicles. In the 80s, it was all about a cool vehicle. The DeLorean, KITT, the Batmobile, you get the picture. You needed a cool car to stand out. Ghostbusters is no different. We're presented with the Ecto-1, an old ambulance/hearse combo that has been fitted with all sorts of bells and whistles to support the Ghostbusters. The Ecto-1 is accompanied by its signature blue flashing lights and mildly annoying but highly recognizable siren. Splashed on each side is the Ghostbusters logo to let you know exactly what you're in for. While it might not be as slick and as cool as other famous cars, this one is still easy to pick out of a lineup. The fact that the early trailers for Ghostbusters Afterlife focused on the Ecto-1 to drum up buzz among fans who are excited by the nostalgia shows just how iconic this vehicle is. For the sequel, well, the Ecto-1 returns, although this time sporting the logo for Ghostbusters 2 on the side. Not sure why they would use that logo in the actual film. Is it supposed to mean the ghost is giving a peace sign? Wouldn't that be sending conflicting messages if they were busting peaceful ghosts? or signaling that this is the second time that they're attempting the business. It's a little muddy, but ultimately not important. The other vehicle in the film is none other than the Statue of Liberty. When the city needs a symbol of hope, the group spray her down with a ton of positively charged slime, hook up a Nintendo joystick controller, and take Lady Liberty out for a nice evening stroll. You know, I wonder how the hell they got her back to Liberty Island afterward. For real though, how can you beat Ecto 1 and the Statue of Liberty? The simple answer? You can't. Verdict? Ghostbusters 2. Round 5. Big Bad. The Ghostbusters series always needs a big-time villain to send our heroes to face, and both films had some doozies. In the original, we are introduced to Gozer the Destructor. The big baddie asks the guys if they are gods, and Ray stupidly says,
No.
God damn it, Ray, you always say yes, always.
Say yes!
Gozer's master plan is to come to the earthly plane to bring about its destruction. Obviously, the Ghostbusters are going to have something to say about this, and when they confront Gozer, they ask them to choose the form of their destruction, and shows up as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Thanks again, Ray. After they melt that form of Gozer, they decide the only way to reverse the energy and rid the world of Gozer is by crossing the streams. Fortunately, it works, and the world is safe from Gozer for now. In the follow-up, we get Vigo the Carpathian. He's an evil ruler and sorcerer from the 16th century. When he was executed by being poisoned, shot, stabbed, hung, stretched, disemboweled, drawn, and quartered, it was said that before his head died, he claimed that he would one day return to rule.
On a mountain of skulls in the castle of pain, I sat on a throne of blood.
Cut to the film, and now he wants to possess Dana's baby, Oscar. He feeds off the negative energy produced by the city and channels it to finally regain a physical form, but before he can possess Oscar, the crew stops him and destroys him, once and for all. While Vigo's ugly portrait is certainly hard to look at, can you really beat Gozer? There's a reason that they showed up again in Afterlife, and not Vigo's big-ass forehead. Verdict? Ghostbusters. Round 6. Cool moments. In the first film, we're given the amusing sequence at the Cedric Hotel. It doesn't have a lot of action, but it does feature them searching for Slimer and showcases the very first use of their famous proton packs. A lot of destruction ensues as a cleaning lady cart and banquet hall are set ablaze. Later on, there's a frightening scene where Dana is possessed by Zool as she fights back against the hands that burst out of her chair before she's dragged into the kitchen. Freaked me the hell out as a kid. Another wild, great scene is when Lewis is chased by the terror dog. Rick Moranis is perfect as Lewis Tully. His delivery when he asks,
Okay, who brought the dog?
is impeccable. He runs for his life, but finally succumbs to the terror dog. The reaction of the dinner patrons is priceless as they just go back to their meals without another thought. Sorry, Tully. And of course, the final showdown with Gozer and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is pure 80s cinema. Melting marshmallow flying everywhere is a ton of gooey fun, and witnessing Walter Peck finally get his comeuppance is a thing of glory. The sequel has its own fair share of cool moments, including the fantastic courtroom sequence where the Scoleri brothers trash the place. The event brings the team back into full ghost busting mode, and seeing everyone else thrown around the courtroom is a riot. Another sight to behold is when the team descend into the sewer system and discover the river of slime. The negative energy flowing right through the heart of the city is unnerving and explains a lot about the New York of the Ghostbusters universe. Winston meeting the business end of a ghost train is a terrific comedic moment with a great punchline when Egon asks him if he caught the name of the train. Later on, the Ghostbusters try to find a way to unite the city and break through the negative energy which has surrounded the museum. They concoct a surprisingly heartfelt plan as they use one of the biggest symbols of hope in the world to unite New York. Plus, seeing a mobile Statue of Liberty walking through the city is pretty dope. Then we come to the climactic showdown between Vigo and the Ghostbusters. He tries to keep them at bay so he can possess baby Oscar, but leave it to Bill Murray's sense of humor to save the day.
Only a Carpathian would come back to life
now and choose New York.
Venkman distracts Vigo long enough for the crowd outside to come together with positive energy. Yay! The guys are then able to send Vigo back where he belongs and destroy him for good. While all these scenes from the sequel are noteworthy, none are as instantly classic as Verdict, Ghostbusters. At the end of the day, Ghostbusters 2 does have a lot to like about it, but the fact is, without the awesomeness of the first film, there would be no part 2. Moments from the 1984 film have been burned into the pop culture landscape since it initially premiered. The dry comedy and top-notch visual effects would become a go-to for future films through the rest of the decade and have legions of fans clamoring for more. While the sequel does expand on the Ghostbusters mythos, it just didn't deliver the goods in a wholly satisfying way like the first film did. It would take a long time for the team to reassemble, but when they finally did, all the nostalgia and references went back to the films that fans loved the most, the original. It should be obvious, but in fans' hearts everywhere, they know who to call. Winner! Ghostbusters! But don't let us have the final word. Tell us in the comments which is your pick, Ghostbusters or Ghostbusters 2. And as always, thanks for watching.
Greek?
Mexican?
Pizza.
Dinner thing.
Chicago.
You're goddamn right.